Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Truth Podcast. My guest this week is Roman Prokopchuk, and he is the founder and CEO of Nova Zora Digital. He is the digital savage, and I love that name, a self-made digital marketer who got it out of necessity and developed a passion for it and for learning. He learns from all his guests and himself to level up in all aspects of life. Welcome to the show, Roman.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I love doing interviews with fellow podcasters. I really do. I think it's some of the funnest stuff I've ever done. It really is. I had a Detroit Lions podcast, and now I'm doing this, and mostly because the Lions podcast has just turned into complaining.
Yeah, the Giants aren't any better, but
oh wow, yeah, you're right. I don't know which is worse.
I think the Giants.
I don't know, man. I really don't. We haven't won anything like ever. I don't think we haven't been to the Super Bowl ever. Not once.
Yeah, well, first time for everything in the future.
I had to get the football stuff out of there. All right. Tell us a little bit about what you do and your story. I'd like to hear that.
Sure. So I'm a first-generation immigrant. I came to the United States in 1990 from Ukraine when I was 5 with 6 other family members. We had to go through Vienna, Austria, Rome, Italy, and then came here to a 2-bedroom apartment. So I basically grew up, 30 years of my life I've spent in the U.S. I went to school here, and then I graduated college here with a degree in criminal justice in 2007, 2008. Prior to which, before I graduated, I had an internship with the Secret Service on the counterfeit currency squad with a top secret federal clearance. And I thought I was going to go the criminal justice route. But when the economy tanked, state, local, and federal agencies froze hiring and basically spending money. So I was looking for a job for months and months. Then I got, down and depressed. Only thing that really kind of, kept me up was working out, going to the gym. And I met a person there and, told my story. And they basically said, come out to my car, which is a little sketchy after, you work out. And they handed me a packet about search engine optimization. And they said, learn this, go online, learn a little bit more. And you can do this for my company. So I did that for a month or two for that company. And then got a job with a bigger company called LexisNexis, where I was for about 4 years, where I ended up managing a elite portfolio of clients. So 6 figures or higher spend a year. And then I left there and went to a few other agencies, had a few director roles. In 2012, started Nova Zora Digital. And 2 years ago, I started my podcast, The Digital Savage Experience. I interview people of all walks of life to see how they got to where they are now and some of the things you can learn from them. And 2 years ago as well, I became a foster parent. So since then, I've had 14 kids in my home, and just kind of trying to balance, professional and life. And even though it's a little hard because I don't think there's a work-life balance, you kind of have to keep pivoting, day after day and, chugging along basically.
Man, it shows you got a big heart, man. It really does. I'm fortunate to have people on this show that are really good people. I have another one today because I could just feel it. Tell me about the foster kids. That's amazing. 14 foster kids. That's something else.
Yeah, we got licensed last day of May of 2018, and we got our first placement June 1st. So the day after 2018. As a little side note, we got into fostering because me and my wife have been going through a infertility, process for the last 3 years. We've had 5 miscarriages, which kind of led up to us fostering. So technically we're foster to adopt. So if the opportunity comes around and, it's a good fit and we care about the child, we're willing to adopt from the foster care system. But our first placement we had for a year, 2 brothers. We were told when we got them in our home that we would be able to adopt them. And with the kind of the child, services or child and family services, however it's called state to state, things change and the story changes, sometimes day to day. So when they said the mom's going to lose parental rights, that didn't end up happening. And then after a year, the boys got reunified. So after that, we took about a month off from fostering because it was kind of a major shock, obviously. Yeah. We went on a family reunion to Hawaii, which was kind of nice. And, we came back and started up again. So we have long-term placements, we have short-term placements, emergency placements. And in that time, we've had 14 kids, and the most we've had at once is 5. So which was pretty interesting.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear about miscarriages and those things, because that is awfully rough on you guys. And I really feel for you, man. I really do. And I appreciate you taking the time to help other kids. Instead, that it just shows you have a big heart for people and kids and that type of things. I really I give props to you, man. I really do. The Digital Savage, I got to listen to a few of those. I really enjoyed those. I think you have really good guests that come on, and I think you do a really good job with them. What has that experience been like for you?
Now, it's been great. I think everybody has a story to tell, but they don't necessarily have a platform to do so. And sometimes people think, my story isn't as significant as this, keynote speaker or this person that went through, these trials, but things that you're going through, there's at least one other person coming kind of from the similar situation. So if you impact one person and kind of change the trajectory of their life or what they may be dealing with or help them through it, it's all worth it. And I've gotten feedback like that from people that have listened. And it's people, CEOs, startup founders, former athletes, to people, in the everyday community that have, interesting stories to tell. And the conversations, oftentimes I go on and I think I'm going to talk about digital marketing, and it's like losing, spouses or losing, children in, 9 months of, the third trimester, and just like crazy stories that come out of like just conversation. And it's more of a low-key conversation where, you're free to discuss anything, and nothing is really forced, which I kind of like that format.
Yeah, I have a similar format here too. I do have a few questions I try to ask everybody, but I generally just feel the conversation out and just let it flow. It's like you're talking to somebody normally, I think that's the best way to do it, because I think, I just don't want stuff scripted as much, because I don't think it helps anything. Have you found that too? Or do you stick
it's
to
a little
certain
forced
questions? Or?
Yeah, I've been on a few podcasts. Last year I think I was on 20 something, where it's very scripted and then very forced, or like you're saying something and the host interrupts a lot. So I try to let the person get their complete thought, and like you, I have about 4 questions that are kind of looser questions but more of an outline to stay on track, because if I really wanted to, I can stay and have a 5-hour long conversation with somebody. So it's more of a guide. So, talking about, what are their journeys, what motivates them. And then usually from their answer, I piggyback with a, follow-up question that interests me from what their response was. So I think you need some kind of framework, but, a natural conversation, and everything else is looser, but leads to somewhere else kind of.
I agree with that. I totally do. I like to let my guests finish their thought. I like to, because people like to talk about what they go through and things like that. And I just don't see the reason to interrupt them. I don't like that format. I do want to ask you, what lit the fire for you to become an entrepreneur? Was that out of necessity, or was that something that was always in you, or how was that?
Founding my company, just seeing, my skill set, the amount of clients I've worked with, and seeing people founding different businesses from that I worked with that, may not know as much as me, and they're doing it. So why not, there's nothing stopping me other than myself from doing so. And then coming from a background where it was, behind the Eastern Bloc, it was still the Soviet Union. So Ukraine got its independence in 92. So about 5 years of my life, I still remember life there. And in terms of not being a free system, you had to pay bribes to people in order for your business to succeed. And if you did things like go to church or, have religious beliefs, you would have things stripped from you in terms of promotions and different other things, and get thrown in jail. So it was very repressive. So I found it, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the United States that founded, big and small companies, Google, other companies, Uber, people, children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, where they're coming from, severe hardships to non-free, economic systems, where they come here and kind of persevere. And it's a little easier for them because technically, the only thing holding you back here is yourself in many ways.
I agree with that. I think a lot of times we hold ourselves back, and in America, because it's so free, and we don't really, I guess we kind of take that for granted here, you know, because somebody that's lived an oppressed life, even for a short time, it you come here and there's so much freedom and there's so much, opportunity that you can see it everywhere. Whereas our own doubts and our own self-doubt, disbelief, stuff like that really hinders us here.
No, I agree. And I think another thing is if people can experience traveling globally, that's something that they can take, their freedoms here and how truly fortunate they are into perspective. Because I recommend if you go out of the country, every country has some kind of neighborhood where it's, not the resort that you're, staying at and not the nice part of a city or a country. Like there's slums. A lot of the world is a lot worse off than the United States. Even if you go somewhere, let's say the Caribbean, you go to Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, if you leave your resort, there's a lot of things where you can go on a tour and you see how people really live to truly be fortunate, having an indoor toilet and plumbing, electricity, running water. I mean, there's people that die from dirty water, malaria, and things that we don't even, think about. So I think it's important in that sense. And like you said, coming from a situation where you know how life can be, how hard it can be. So, and everything else is just, easy. I mean, I'm not saying there won't be variables stacked against you, because oftentimes things go wrong all the time in your life or in business, or if you're trying to get some kind of business license, you get it denied or something like that. But at the end of the day, you can still pivot and persevere and make whatever you want happen. I mean, it's a little cliche because it's not that easy because there's a lot of time involved, but people try to get to the kind of get rich quick scenario, jump on the next wave, crypto, cannabis or CBD or whatever, and think that's the magic formula. But if you want to build something, it takes time and it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It doesn't happen overnight. It's funny because I have that on this show a lot where it's like my first guest, she had cancer and, her husband left her and she started in like 2013 and in 2019, she was the micro video queen. So it's like the overnight success is such a myth. It is such a myth. And people think, wow, that guy he just did it. And, that guy's probably been doing it for 10, 15 years,
Yeah, I think time is like a double-edged sword. So saying I can do it tomorrow or have all the time in the world, that's not accurate. But taking the time, if you start now and really, going ahead, eventually you will get to where you want to get if obviously you're putting out something of value and you're good at it and then you're promoting it to the world. I mean, with the internet connection, you can really scale your business.
Totally agree. There's so many opportunities and there's so many things that people are good at that there should never be a shortage of that. But I think the person that we have to fight the most is the one in the mirror.
Yeah, I actually like saying, I mean, I have like a catchphrase, you versus you. So the greatest thing in your way is yourself majority of the time, because you're the one that's bringing all the self-doubt or anxiety or uncertainty. And, what would these people think? My product's not good enough. My idea is not good enough. Well, you're never going to really know if it's going to go anywhere if you don't, do something about it or have some kind of plan or take that idea out of your mind, write it down, develop some kind of plan and start executing. The worst thing you can do is not do anything. But, if you do it and it fails, you have something to learn from, and then you can pivot and build on that experience.
You're always smarter than somebody, but you're always not as smart as somebody. And I think that's very important to understand. If you feel like you don't have enough education on a certain topic, well, go educate yourself. I mean, those things can be dealt with, but it's the internal things that you have to deal with that I think are the things that hold you back. The I'm not good enough stuff, I go through that. I think everybody goes through that. But it's what you do with that that makes a difference. What do you think on that?
Yeah, that, and I think even like this medium, obviously, we're talking and doing things like going up on stage. So I think there's been a study where people were polled and did a survey, and they said they would rather die than do public speaking. So everybody, like you said, everybody has a fear. Everybody has a fear. Everybody's insecure one way or another. And if somebody tells you they're not, then they're lying. I mean, there's no way a human being can be 100% motivated 100% of the time. Each day it's different. Each day you have different variables, like we spoke offline. You have personal issues. You may have setbacks professionally. You may have deaths in the family, or, loved ones or pets. That all affects your mind and, what you're doing at that moment. So just because you're down or in some kind of dark place doesn't mean tomorrow will, you can either be on a high or like a mountain or a plateau and fall the next day, or vice versa. You can be in the darkest place and then get yourself up the next day. So it's all perspective, and it's all relative to now.
Yeah. I mean, we're all human. We all hurt. We all have things that have come against us. We have situations that happen to us in our life. But when you were talking about the You Against Joe, I was thinking of the Rocky movie where he fights the Russian guy, and then the other one is, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up.
Yeah, that, and I like Mike Tyson's everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's with the boxing theme, but it's, life does not go the way you want it. I mean, 2019, I had it, planned a certain way. Professionally, yes, it may have went a certain way. I've had successes in the podcast. It's got into top 100, in the US and across the globe. That's all well and good. But, personally, I've also had these hardships and losses where, in that sense, it was one of the hardest years of my life, which I've learned things from. So I think it's all perspective.
I think that you've got a heart. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, taking a step back and being upset about certain things that happen in your life. I don't have any problem with anybody that has to do that, because that just makes us human. That's who we are, and you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you react to it.
Yep, I agree. All you can do is kind of be you and deal with it. People are going to say things, people are going to do things, but it's, how you react to it. And it's if you allow things in, they'll affect you more. So, if somebody's talking about you, or, leaving you a bad review for your business, or if you're working for a company, somebody, reporting you for something that's not true, or saying something like I said about you, you have to give them the power to, affect you. First, you have to let them in. If you can bypass that, it's easier, said than done. If you can kind of block them out, it's a lot easier to, cope and deal with it.
I agree. I've had that happen to me, too. And it's just, the thing is, you have to consider the source on some things, man. You just do. And the fact that you're still here and doing what you're doing is a testament to you being able to get back up and being a tough individual. You know what I mean? To be able to persevere and keep going and doing what you're doing, being in the top 100, that's really, really good. That's really good, man.
Yeah, thank you. And like you said, I think you're here today. As long as you wake up tomorrow, you can change your trajectory. You don't have to be in the same place of life unless you just stay there. And you can wish all you want to be successful, be rich, be whatever you want to be. But if you don't take any action whatsoever, you're just going to sit around for days, months, years, hoping for a change where you're not facilitating a change. So
I agree. I had a lady on, and I think I published that one today, where she had cerebral palsy, and she authored 10 books and has 3 podcasts with that. And I'm like, I was blown away. I'm like, man, I thought I had problems. You know what I mean? And it's like, this lady's just amazing. It just blew me away. It really did. And I get to be on this platform and have people that just amaze me because of their perseverance, because of what they go through and what they do not make excuses for.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you have no excuse, like you said. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was gatekeepers to everything. You know what I mean? If you wanted to break down or break out in music to be an artist, there's so many unsigned artists that, just put music on SoundCloud or Spotify and then broke through. and don't even have a record label behind them. They do everything themselves and keep 100% of the profits. Even, the audio space, there's big companies getting into and sponsoring and putting out podcasts now because they see the value of voice and that platform. And with anything else, before it was just TV. I mean, there was, 4 major networks controlling everything. And if they didn't like you, you would not break through, even though you may be good and have something positive to contribute. If, a few people did not like you, you could not pass. But now, I mean, anyone in the world can listen to this with an internet connection. So
it's amazing. Like for authors, Kindle has been something else. They can self-publish now. They can get their work out there. The internet has revolutionized business. It has given the underdog the opportunity to be able to, be whatever they want to be. And now really the only thing that holds us back is ourselves, like we had mentioned before. Where in your business, how are you growing your audience? Because that's a big thing podcasters want to know, and the people that listen to the show, they want to know how to grow their reach or their numbers, whatever. How do you do that? I would say, unless it's like secret or something, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get.
I mean, I don't think there's a magic formula. My obviously show is interview format right now, so the guests actually help a lot in terms of getting, the message or the interview out to their communities and piggybacking kind of off their communities. I try to do as many appearances on other shows, not necessarily plug my podcast, but tell my story, some of the things I've been through. And some of the podcasts don't even mention, my company I founded or my podcast. And those people are then curious from my story and then go check out more information about me and end up finding my podcast or more information about me. But in terms of kind of digital, I would say put out content as much as you can to where the people you're trying to attract are. I mean, I guess it's as simple as that. Good content is good content at the end of the day. So in 2020, content is still only audio, written word, video, and image. So bottling content in those types, and then basically the distribution mechanism. It's like you have to have the right bullet fit the right gun to do the job. So if you're doing for something to LinkedIn, obviously there's formats that connect better with LinkedIn versus Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. And when a new platform comes out, you should always test it. Like I'm on TikTok, I'm not as active as I want, but I posted a clip of something related to foster care. And I guess in like 5 hours, it got like 26,000 views, 4,000 likes, like crazy.
Wow.
And it's still like the Wild West. So you have to capitalize off opportunities because eventually that's going to get capped. So that's happened with Facebook in terms of organic reach, Instagram, Twitter. With TikTok, you should go on and if you have a product or your personality or you want to brand yourself, you're a comedian, you should definitely put content out because you can reach a far greater amount of people and eventually it will get a cap. But until then, you may just break out in that time and build a large community.
It's like find the wave and then ride it before it crashes.
Yeah, and becoming kind of a early adapter is great too, getting on it as early as possible because then you can get the maximum amount of reach without even spending any money.
That's really good advice. I appreciate that because, there's a lot of people out there that just don't know how to get their stuff out there and they have good stuff, but I have a lady that I interviewed and her voice is amazing. I mean, she sings and it's just beautiful. But it's getting that out to the world so that the world can recognize how beautiful that is. And I think that was really helpful. I appreciate that. I do.
Yeah, and I think that not everybody is a marketer or coming from a marketing degree. So, I mean, I have 11 years in digital. Somebody coming into it from something different may not know, the first thing about it. But like even with that, I'm always happy to answer messages and do kind of even free calls to just help people out. And that goes a long way. I mean, the last two or this week and last week I put out a lot of content and I've had just random companies reach out in terms of interest of doing different digital marketing campaigns just solely on what they saw from what I'm doing. And that's another thing. Like if you claim to be an expert in social media, but somebody goes to your profile and you, let's say, don't have a Twitter profile, but you say you're an expert in Twitter or Twitter campaigns, but you do not have a presence yourself. it's one of those things. Being authentic goes a long way. So if
It does.
anybody goes to my LinkedIn, like, it's well optimized in terms of my profile, in my opinion.
Yes, it
So
is.
yeah,
I've been there.
so yeah, I mean, I've been to different meetings and stuff where they had experts where they talked about how to get into LinkedIn and do this and do that, and their accounts aren't at a point where I am, and everybody's bullish on LinkedIn now. I think I got on LinkedIn in 2011, so it's not like
Yeah.
I grew in a month. I mean, I have 22,000 connections, but it took 11 years.
I
So
had 19,000 followers on Twitter in 2004.
yeah, and at that time,
With a
like I
different
said,
thing. I mean,
yeah,
it was like nobody had ever heard of Twitter at that
yeah,
point.
and your reach went a long way, and you can build a following really quickly. So like that's that kind of early adaptation of a platform can really build a community really fast.
I agree with that. That's a very good tip. It's a very good tip for the listeners and people out there. Appreciate that. So you said you have a digital marketing company as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I started it in 2012. Kind of my core discipline is, like I said, search engine optimization. But then I saw how the ecosystem of digital marketing was changing. So I learned social media, paid social, paid search, content strategy, different in terms of analytics, reputation management. So kind of the gambit of digital marketing. I've helped clients in the legal field, life sciences, pharma, financial, fitness. And at this point, I believe since I started my career with my company and other companies, I worked on about, I would say, around 600 campaigns at this point. So I've kind
That's
of
really
seen
good.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen everything. And I like to take things that work in a specific industry and try them in a different industry. So let's say pharmaceuticals, they're very kind of old school and don't necessarily try a lot of things because it's heavily regulated. Any piece of content, any promotional material has to go through a legal, medical, and regulatory board before it can even be put up. So they don't like to like mess around and like kind of reinvent the wheel or push any kind of envelopes. So taking things that have worked in other industries and applying them can really go a long way because not a lot of people are doing them.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense, especially in that arena, especially in the pharmaceutical arena. That is heavily, like you said, heavily regulated, and it must be a challenge for them, even though they have a lot of money, to be able to um, put out content that like you see the commercials where it's like, yeah, oh, this is going to be really great, but then they have to mention all the side effects and things that have ever happened to anyone. You know what I mean? So it gets to be really difficult in that respect to be able to market your stuff in a way that people will want to respond to it.
Yep, and there's stuff that goes direct to consumer in that space, and then also marketing to doctors that basically push them to, push prescriptions and different devices on their patients, which I don't necessarily agree with 100%. I actually, at a past agency, worked with Purdue Pharma that basically, manufactured Oxy. So
Okay.
they were kind of one of the main people responsible for kind of the opioid epidemic. And they really pushed doctors to just prescribe it for anything. And it was just like scripts flying left and right. And you had all these people getting addicted to painkillers. So some of the practices I don't necessarily agree with, but I think that specific industry has come a long way. And there's even things that pharmaceutical companies hire agencies for. So it's called adverse event basically monitoring. So you have a team member that monitors social, does social listening, anything on the web that somebody posts. That's like, okay, I took so and so medicine, and my whole body's tingling, or like I can't stop bleeding or whatever. And there's a specific procedure. If you see it, you have to report it to a watchdog group and then the FDA within 24 hours. So there's just like crazy regulations and things on top of what you're doing to basically, make sure that company is in the clear in terms of penalties and different lawsuits and stuff.
That's It's really difficult when you see the other side of it, because a lot of people are against big pharma and all that type of thing, and there's a lot of movements against that. But when you see what they actually have to do to have their stuff regulated, it's quite there's quite a lot of hoops, is what there is. It's quite a lot that they have to do.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, it's been as simple as submitting content where it was like Happy Veterans Day and there was a veteran on the board, the review board, and they're like, Happy doesn't go with veterans. It's a solemn day. So he basically disapproved that content and sent it back. Once one thing in the whole, it was actually a social calendar. So it was posts for a whole month, proposed posts, the creative assets, and then the text that accompany it. That one post, basically, he had an issue with. It sent the whole thing back, so you had to resubmit, and then it took, a certain amount of time for them to re-review it.
Wow, it's really hard to have a calendar like that.
Yeah, doing a few months at a time definitely helps, because if you do it month to month, there's things that always come up like that.
That's crazy. That is something else. So you have a podcast, you have a marketing company, digital marketing company. Anything else that you're doing right now or going to come out with?
Fostering. I applied. Hopefully, I get a TED Talk this year
Oh,
that I
that would
want
be
to kind of
great.
talk about. I've tried to advocate as much as possible for the foster care system and bringing about change. The department in New Jersey is actually getting audited, which is funny. But yeah, like I said, there's 700,000 kids in the foster care system, and then once they age out, if the parents lose parental rights, they stay in the system. If they're not adopted, if they age out, there's like a 50% chance they end up homeless, and different things like sex trafficking, drugs overdose, or gangs. So it really is important, because that's a whole generation of kids that you can potentially change in the right direction to benefit society, and not be the next statistic.
That's hugely important, because that's our next generation. You know, um, wow. I honestly, I didn't have an idea about that. I didn't know. Just be honest. I was raised by my parents and all that stuff. We didn't adopt anybody, so we didn't have, and I have no experience with that. But just saying that, if they age out, which means they get to 18, is that the age?
Yep, they get to 18, and then the state is no longer responsible for them.
Oh, so that means that they're just thrown away.
Basically, if they have nowhere to go, if they're not, there are a lot of opportunities for kids in the system. Like, I guess in New Jersey, I don't know what it is in other states, they'll pay for their college education, but you have to be driven enough to get into college and do some of the paperwork and some of the steps to do so. I went to like a adoption and foster event, and there was actually a girl that like is living in the dorm that basically aged out, but got the opportunities, and she's one of the lighter or positive stories. But most people don't know what they're doing and aren't necessarily pushed, and they're already coming from traumatic situations where they feel like they're worthless and nobody cares about them, and they can't achieve anything in life, and they're just going to be like how their parents or wherever they came from are. So if somebody steps in and offers some kind of positive direction, that may kind of sway the difference in terms of how they end up when they grow up.
So is there programs out there for this? I mean, when they age out, that really bothers me. I mean, on a deep level, that bothers me.
There's
So,
things state to state, but like it's just like all technicalities. Like even in New Jersey, like people, it's reunification over everything. That's kind of the mantra. So
mhm.
it's not necessarily what's best for the child. It's let's give them back to, if they're found willing and better, they're giving back to the parents or the guardians, but they don't necessarily have to do everything in terms of like what they should be doing. So we've had instances where like we say and voice our concerns and say, listen, they shouldn't be going back. And they're like, well, don't worry about it. They're probably going to end up back in the system. So it's like, why would you give them back and put them through something else traumatic for them to just end up because you want to get a case off your desk? So there's a lot of bureaucracy, and people only do things when it kind of inconveniences them from the system's point of view.
That just shows no heart whatsoever. It does.
Yeah,
So
I
is there
mean,
kind of a community out there that you can use a platform to, I mean, are you creating a platform for this? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know this part. I didn't know. So I'm asking questions.
so I mean, every podcast I go on, I try to at least mention it. And if people are interested in becoming foster parents or the system or my personal experiences in terms of dealing with the system in New Jersey, I'm more than happy to, continue that situation. In terms of kind of like dealing with it myself, we're in like a bunch of kind of foster and adoption groups. So we're like
Mhm.
meet and we know, because it's hard. Like people are sympathetic, like, okay, these are the crazy things going on, but they didn't experience that. So having somebody that has experienced a kid that they wanted to adopt, but they got taken and they know that pain, it's like therapeutic meeting with people that, went through the same thing.
Yeah, so if you guys out there, if anybody has been through that, I hope that you would contact Roman, and we're going to put some links down below so you can contact him about that situation, because I think it's something that we really should address. I think it should be addressed more than it is. And thank you for bringing awareness to that, because it's very important for me, at least, it's part of my heart to help the next generation as well. So um, that's it's a big part of my life. So I just wanted to let you know too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I mean, not everybody has that mind shift, but I think for me, I mean, maybe in my 20s, I was like, let me climb the ladder, let me make as much money as possible. But getting into my 30s, it's more about legacy and leaving an impact and providing, information free of charge in terms of my experiences and helping people out, because that actually has gone a lot longer in terms of business opportunities coming along, different relationships being built, than just like solely being cutthroat and focusing on promotions and money and this and that. Because eventually, if you're good at something and you put that out there and you help people as much as you can with either your skill set or volunteering or anything, or try to have some kind of impact, there's things that kind of reciprocate and come down the line. It may not be today, but eventually, like, good things do happen when you start doing good for others.
I agree. I agree with that. I have found that I think the entrepreneurs, at least the ones that I've interviewed so far, and that's like what, 55, 56 of them now, uh, they've all had really good hearts for people. And I think our generation, and I'll include me in this because, well, I'm 50, so I'm a little older. But I think that this generation coming up really wants to help their own generation and the next generation coming out. And I can see that the millennials have all the causes and things like that, and I see really good things coming for us. This world is kind of a scary place right now, and I think that the more good people that are successful, the better off the whole world will be.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's a lot of opportunities, and I think there's a lot of smart people out there that can solve a lot of the world's issues if they just calm down a little bit, sat down. You got all these smart people in a room and give them a whiteboard, and I'm sure with all the ideas that everybody puts on there, I'm sure you can solve a few of the problems the world's going through right now.
I totally agree with that. Is there anything like, oh, I wanted to ask you one more thing. If you had somebody that was just starting out being an entrepreneur, what advice would you give them?
I would say find somebody that is somewhere where you want to be down that line. So if you want to found a digital marketing agency, find somebody that has already. They don't necessarily have to have a mentor, but I would encourage you to, if you can, get a mentor in the field that you're looking to get into, and take as much opportunity to learn as fast as possible. And if you knock on doors and you can't get them open, try to get an internship or shadow someone, or offer, you know, contingency, a plan. Like, I'll do this for free, and you're expected to see these results. And after you see these results, you can start, paying me. But getting your foot in the door and getting as much experience as possible, because at that point, it's kind of like your body of work. So if you can get a mentor, find somebody that has already, they don't necessarily have to have a mentor, but I would encourage you to, if you can, get a mentor in the field that you're looking to get into, and take as much opportunity to learn as fast as possible. And if you knock on doors and you can't get them open, try to get an internship or shadow someone, or offer, you know, contingency, for a lot of stuff or a lot of careers. And then also there's a lot of people I've met that usually you have to pay thousands of dollars for. It's simply taking the time and understanding where they're going to be and what they're doing. So, you know, one year I met, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk. I met the co-founder of PayPal. I met Gerard Adams, Lewis Howes, and some other people. And it's just like one of those things. And if you do run into somebody, don't be afraid to go up to them and maybe even pick their brain for a minute or two, or just show some kind of interest. Because when you see somebody, maybe an athlete, I mean, some athletes, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that too, but based on the egos, yeah. But going up to them and asking a question that you have, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm starting out. Do you have any recommendations for me? Or can I even like just kind of take your shot? You know, can you come on my podcast? Can you give me a quote? Can I just record a short video with you where you answer this question? Just, and if you have to offer something of value, you know, your time, something that you're good at, maybe you've seen that that's a weakness in terms of their content strategy and you're really good at it, maybe plug a hole for free and, you know, they'll help you out or give you a shout out. But definitely don't, you know, overthink yourself, or don't think like you're good enough to talk to somebody or, you know, ask them for something. The worst you can get with anything is a no. But if you don't ask, that might have been that, you know, stepping stone to get you into wherever you wanted to get, but you never tried, so you're never going to know.
I totally agree with that. 100%. I had a guy from ESPN on my show, from my Lions show, and it was pretty cool talking to those people. And like you talking to Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm sure that was like amazing, wasn't it? That's got to be great, right?
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, it's a similar, he's from Eastern Europe. He came here with all these family members to like an apartment. And obviously he has a bunch of other zeros in his account than I do. But knowing somebody that made it from where you came up is important too, because sometimes things seem unattainable. But when you see somebody make it from where you're from or similar circumstances, you know that that can actually happen if you know, take the right steps.
That's what this show's all about. I try to get people on, and you know, certain people are going to resonate with certain people, you know, and not everyone is going to like the message today, but people are, you know, I mean, but people are going to see that the person that you're going to attract is going to be from your vibe, and that way, you know, we can help other people in your situation and things that you have been through, that they're like, oh my gosh, that's me, you know, that's me right now. And I can see what he's done and what he's been through. And I think if he could make it, I can make it too, type of an attitude. And that's what we try to do. We try to get as many different people as we can to try to help others.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of perspectives out there, a lot of people to learn from, and a lot of things that, you know, people have been through, either that you can relate to or it's different than you. But just having an open mind and looking at things from a different perspective, I think is really important, and having empathy for situations.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. I totally agree with that. Be your authentic self too. You know, don't be somebody else. Don't try to be anybody else. Just be you, you know, because there's not another you. But there are people that will be like, well, that's kind of like me. You know, I kind of feel the same way as that guy. And then that will become the people that'll be your audience, you know. But man, it's been a good show. It's been a really, really good show. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with, links or anything
Um,
you got going on?
yeah, I mean, my company is Nova Zora Digital. You can check that out if you Google it. My podcast is the Digital Savage Experience. You can check it out, leave me feedback if you want me to interview somebody specifically. Anything I spoke about today on this show, or that I mentioned that is, you know, an expertise of mine or experience I've been through. If you're going through the same thing or you need some kind of advice or help, I'm more than happy to jump on a call or a conference free of charge, and you can pick my brain, and hopefully I can add value.
That was really good. I really appreciate you being on here, Roman. You got a big heart for people, and I appreciate you, okay?
Thanks again for having me on.
All right. Everybody, hit the subscribe button and the little bell thing. I'm just kidding. I love saying it that way, though, so I just continue to do it. But if you could, subscribe to the channel, and we really appreciate you watching, and thank you. We will see you next time.